I don't know if you're aware of this, but in 2016, the Oxford English Dictionary's word of the year was post-truth. Post-truth. In the year that we had Brexit, in the year that the United States voted for President Trump, the Oxford English Dictionary selected as their word of the year, post-truth. And many sociologists and commentators will tell you that we are living in a post-truth era, where facts are flexible, where we can pick and choose what truth is. Friedrich Nietzsche, who was a philosopher in the late 1800s and an atheist, said, "There are no facts, only interpretations." That was over 100 years ago that he said that. But I think most of you today would agree with me that that is a fair reflection of the society that we live in. That there are no facts, only interpretations. We make our own facts. We interpret things as we want to. And you cannot say what is right and what is wrong. There is no hard truth. There is no hard lie. Everything can be fact. Everything can be true. It's all down to your interpretation. This is a post-truth world. And we come in our series to look at what Jesus has to say about truth, to find out what the Lord of all the universe wants to say about truth to us, to his followers, to the people who have dedicated our lives to serving him. It's interesting, isn't it, that Jesus chooses to speak about truth in his Sermon on the Mount. As I thought about it, I wondered why he was so bothered about truth. Particularly, I guess I'm influenced by the society I live in, particularly living in a society where truth has such low value. I was asking the question, why does Jesus care about truth so much? Why is my God, who I serve, so passionate about truth? Why does it matter so much to God that he would take time in this Sermon on the Mount to address it, to speak about truth? In Genesis, we read the creation story. We see that God created the heavens and the earth out of nothing. He created the light. He put the sun and the moon in the sky. He made animals. He made plants. He made everything, and it was good. And he made Adam and Eve and put them in the garden in relationship with himself, a perfect relationship with God. Adam and Eve walked in the garden, and they had intimate relationship with God. They knew him, and he knew them. But what broke that beautiful relationship? That incredible relationship was broken when the serpent came to Adam and Eve and lied to them. When the serpent came to Adam and Eve and said, "Did God really say that you shall not eat from that tree? Did he really say that you would die? You will not die. You'll be like God." When the serpent came and lied, the relationship between God and man was broken. Is it any wonder that God is passionate about truth? As we read through the rest of the Old Testament, you see in Leviticus that there's a whole passage there about dishonest measures, about how if you have scales to weigh out quantities of something that you're selling, it's important that they're calibrated properly, that your weights are accurate, so that we're not dishonest in our business transactions, that we don't sell a kilo when it's actually 900 grams. God cared and cares about honesty and accuracy and transparency. All through the Old Testament, we see that the Israelites turn away from the truth and from the true God, and they follow false gods. And God's heart breaks as his children believe the lies of all the countries that lie round about them and start following after false gods. And time and again, God's father heart is broken as he sees his children believing lies. Our God is a God who is passionate about truth. In John 1:9, as John tells about Jesus coming in, he says, coming into the world, he says this: "The true light, who gives light to all men, was coming into the world." He describes Jesus as the true light. Jesus describes himself in John 14:6. He says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So when we come to look at this issue of truth, we have to understand that our God's character is truth. In him there is no deceit. There is no deception. There are no lies. Our God is truth. So let's turn together. Let's look in Matthew 5 and let's read this passage where Jesus is adding on to everything that the Israelites already knew about God. He's speaking to people who have a picture of who God is. A picture that's been formed through their history, through their understanding of the Bible that they had, through the prophets, through the writings of the Israelites. And Jesus is building on that and fleshing out the story of who God is, revealing more of the identity of God. So we're in Matthew chapter 5 and we're starting at verse 33. Colossians 3:17 says this: whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it in the name of the Lord Jesus, always giving thanks to God the Father. Whatever you do, whether in word or deed. Paul, as he writes to the church in Colossus, puts the two together. He says in word and in deed. They're so closely linked. Church, I put it to you that our world's biggest challenge of us as the church is that we are hypocrites. That we don't do what we say we do. That we don't live the way that we say we should live. And they may point back to the Crusades and say, well, you went all through the Middle East killing people and trying to convert them. Or they may point to more recent history and say you set up all these schools and all these care homes, but then they were full of abuse. Why should we listen to what you have to say? And as long as our conduct isn't transparent, as long as our words and our deeds don't line up, then we have no platform to speak from. Our prism is opaque. The light can't shine through it because of the haze of mistrust and distrust and dishonesty that's generated by hypocrisy, by our conduct, by our words not matching our deeds. I remember 8 years ago, it's a moment that really sticks with me, not out of any sense of pride, but more a sense of shame, I suppose, that this happened. But I was sat at my desk in the office, and I'd started to come back to Christ. I'd backslidden a bit, I suppose, and my life didn't line up as it should have done. And I'm sat in my office, and the conversation got onto church and the things of God, and I kind of put my head up, and I said, well, I'm a Christian. And I remember the girl who sat opposite me. I'd worked with her for a few years by that point. And she looked up and she laughed. And she wasn't laughing because she thought being a Christian was ridiculous. She was laughing because she thought it was ridiculous that I would claim to be a Christian. Because my conduct didn't tell that story. My deeds didn't match my words. What a challenge to all of us. Do our deeds match our words? Can we honestly say that we're living lives of total integrity and transparency, where everything we do matches up with what we say we believe? If we preach grace, do we live grace? If we preach acceptance, will we open our arms wide to every person who comes? If we preach love, will we love anyone? If we preach forgiveness, will we forgive anybody? Church, this is our challenge. That the world outside thinks that we are hypocrites. And we in here, as people who believe and follow Jesus, are set the challenge of living lives that are completely transparent, where our conduct is aligned with what we say we believe, so that people might see Jesus, so that people might know that he is real, that he is alive.